Maryland basketball will crush Villanova on Sunday.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm also doing work at InsideBlackandGold.net, so make sure you guys head over to InsideBlackandGold.net for all your latest Terps news. I think Maryland basketball is going to dominate the Villanova Wildcats on Sunday. Maryland basketball this year, man, I'm telling you, this team has a chance to be special. And we play a huge game against Villanova on Sunday, a crucial game. And I'll talk more about why it's so important later on in the episode. But I'm going to go out there and say that Maryland basketball is going to dominate the Villanova Wildcats. Plus, with Coach Jay Wright, who of course isn't their coach anymore, and a lot of people think of Villanova as a really good basketball school. It's known for its basketball. When people think of Villanova, they often think about basketball. But let me tell you, these last couple of years, ever since Jay Wright left and stepped down, and he was doing stuff, and he's been doing stuff in the media and stuff. Ever since he's been gone, this Villanova program hasn't been that great. And this year is an example of a team that I think a lot of people hear the name Villanova and they automatically think, oh, they have a good team. And I'm not saying they don't have a good team. This is the second best team we've played this year. I think that's pretty clear. I'd say Marquette's definitely the best team we've played so far, and they've proven it so far with their results so far this season. They just haven't been that great this year. When you look at the numbers, when you look at who they've lost to, they haven't had a good season. And I still think they're trying to figure out their groove overall. They kind of remind me a little bit of how we were last year in terms of starting the season, where you come into the season, you have these high expectations for Villanova basketball, then all of a sudden you lose a couple games and you say, are we as good as we thought we were going to be this year? And I honestly think that's been what has happened to the Villanova Wildcats when we look at some of their scores. But to be completely frank with you guys, I think we're better than them. And I think if you look at who they've lost to so far this season, there's not a team that they have lost that I would say we're not better than. And it's one thing to get upset once in college basketball. Happens in every single sport. Obviously, college basketball is a big one. That might be the number one sport. When you hear an upset, a lot of people think March Madness. They think about college basketball because upsets can happen in the game of basketball. If you shoot the three ball well, you can upset somebody in basketball. There's so many different ways to beat people in basketball. It's not all just pure talent. Football, there are upsets, obviously, but they just happen a little bit less, I feel like, than when we think about a March Madness. Like, oh, if we had a team, if we had a bracket of 64 teams, like in a Georgia, Bama, Ohio State was a 1 seed, and they could never lose to a 16 seed. But in college basketball, that happens all the time. But my point is with Villanova is it's not like they got upset once. They have lost 3 games so far this season where I think they were favored. Yeah, they were favored. I remember looking at the Virginia-Villanova game, and they were favored. And so they've lost 3 games that they've been favored in already this season. And that quickly tells me that they're not as good as Vegas thinks. They're not as good as a lot of people think. They're not as good as they're just not as good as what we thought they were going to be. They lost by 10 to Columbia. Like, losing by 10 to Columbia, you happen for a team like Villanova. And then they lose by 7 to St. Joe's, another team you shouldn't lose to if you're the Villanova Wildcats. And then Virginia, they lose by 10 in a game where they were favored in. So to me, I see these scores, and it's never that easy to just say they lost to Columbia, they lost to St. Joseph, they lost to Virginia, so Maryland can win. But I do think you have to assume that there's a pattern here with Villanova basketball, with losing basketball games so far this season. And I look at the scores and I really believe we're just better than them right now. We lost by 4 to a Marquette team that's going to be that's a top 14 team in the country that I honestly thought we could have easily won that game. And I thought arguably we were the better team. We're looking at Villanova. They're struggling to get wins against a non-power 5 type of basketball program. So I think when I think about that and see what they've done this year, they have clearly struggled. I also think we just have more talent than them this year. I don't think their team this year is as good as they thought they were going to be. I think they have a couple of really good players, but I think overall this team has not performed up to what a lot of people thought they were going to be. I think when you look at guard play, I think our guards are better than them, really. I think they have a decent player in the Popular kid. And they have another kid in this Brinkus kid, but I think Jacoby Gillespie is going to be the best guard on the court. That's a big reason why I think Maryland's going to be able to dominate this game, because I think Gillespie is going to be the best guard on the court during the game, and that means something. That's important, and I think he's going to have a big game for the Terrapins, because I think he's going to be the best guard on the court. I also think that when we look at what their strength is that kid Eric Dixon down low. Talented player. He also shoots threes. He does a little bit of everything, but he's a big body. He's not actually the tallest guy, but he's like a 4 or 5 for them. Their best player's been there a little bit. A guy that you don't want to not go in with a serious game plan against him, because right now he's averaging 24.4 points a game, almost 8 rebounds, a steal. He's shooting 56% from 3, 100% from the free throw line, 56 field goal percentage. But I just think they're one-dimensional when I look at their team. Like, I don't see a bunch of guys that can do a lot. So it really, to me, is like, okay, like, yeah, Eric Dixon's talented. He's good, but it's similar to what the problem Maryland had last year. And it's a big reason why I think we have the advantage over Villanova. It's like, after him, who do I really have to worry about? And to me, it's not much that you really have to worry about besides Eric Dixon, to be completely honest. And I think we have the guys down low. We have 2 bodies that we can throw at him all game, as well as and Derek Queen and Julian Reese that are going to be guarding him all game. And I think Julian Reese, really talented defender. I think he's going to do a really good job on him. And we're going to say, Julian Reese, this game, you don't have to score a bunch of points. You just have to guard Eric Dixon. And I think we're going to double him. We're going to make it hard for him. And I don't see a ton of other places where they're going to get their offense. I also think that we're going to throw Jordan Geronimo on him, and he's going to do a really good job as well. But I think when I look at their team, their defense hasn't been good this year. I think Maryland can score on these guys. All 3 losses, they gave up 83 against St. Joe's. They gave up 90 to Columbia. They gave up 70 to Virginia team that I just watched last night be able to barely score 40 points. Like, their defense has been bad. That's the main part of their team. Their offense hasn't been horrible, hasn't been great, but I think they're a little bit one-dimensional. But I also think Maryland can just score against these guys. I think Gillespie should have a day. I think Rodney Rice should get a lot of shots. I think Derek Queen should be able to do what he wants to do. Villanova's defense has been bad the entire year. And so I think Maryland has a really good chance at taking advantage of the defense. And I think Maryland's going to be able to dominate that way. They finally had a good defensive game in their Tuesday game against Penn, but still Penn isn't anything special. So I'm not going to overreact to them having one good game against a Penn team that's not that great overall. So I do think Maryland has a really good chance to not just win this game, but when I say dominate, win by like 15 points. That's like 10, 15, maybe even 20 points against Villanova. Will that happen? I think there's a good shot at it happening. But Maryland's known to make these games more difficult than what they are. We see it so many times. Maryland basketball, Maryland football. I feel like that's just the theme of Maryland athletics, making it harder than it needs to be. We've seen that really a ton this year with Maryland football, but I think basketball sometimes feels like that a little bit. I also think the lineup change helps a lot. Now having Rodney Rice in there instead of Deshaun Harris-Smith and bringing Deshaun off the bench, I think that really benefits us and makes it a lot harder for a team like Villanova to play against us and know how to attack us with Rodney Rice in there with three guards, Selton, Gillespie, and Rodney, all that can fill it up. We're going to be favored in this one. I think we're the better team. So let's prove it on Sunday. I wanted to talk about this over the Iowa game because I feel like you guys care more about the basketball season at this point. But I'm going to talk later about why we need it to be a win. But next, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Iowa-Maryland game. How can the Terps pull the upset? I talked a little bit about it tomorrow, but I'll talk about it more. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps the lineup alive. Sign up today and get 50% instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers a weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday each Tuesday. PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value to your lineups. I think Justin Jefferson will get more than 83.5 yards next week. Lamar Jackson more than 1.5 touchdowns. Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get 50% instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get 50% instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So Maryland football. How do the Terps upset an Iowa team that's better than us? They're better than us this year. I think that's pretty clear. Iowa football. I do think they're beatable, though. When we play Penn State next weekend, I don't know if they're beatable. Iowa, they're beatable in football, and they've had a pretty solid year, but they have some holes on their team that I think we could take advantage of. They're 6-4 this year. They're definitely a better team than us, but they're not anything crazy. They're definitely a winnable team. Like they just lost to UCLA. Actually, they're an inconsistent team. They haven't been able to play with any consistency. And I think for one thing is, I think for Maryland, I think the big thing is making this game kind of just a mashup, make it a little bit of a harder type of game where it's not all clean, where people are throwing for 50 million yards. I think if you make this game, you kind of mash it up a little bit. You don't make it super easy on Iowa to do what they want to do, and maybe they make it harder on us, and it's a kind of an ugly game. That's the word. I was kind of looking for the word. If you make this game an ugly game, I think you can have a chance at beating Iowa. But if you let Iowa do what they want to do, which is run the football, which I talked about yesterday, then you're going to lose this game. If you let them, I'll keep it pretty simple. I think Maryland has the tools to put the upset up because I think we match up decently with them, and I'll tell you why. But I think you cannot let Caleb Johnson get going. Like UCLA didn't let Caleb Johnson get going. 18 carries, 49 yards, and they were able to kind of, even though they didn't go off offensively, their quarterback threw 2 interceptions actually, but they were still able to win the game because they were able to kind of make it more ugly, even though they aren't as talented as Iowa. They're not as good as Iowa. They were able to get it done. And I think if you just get the ball out of Caleb Johnson's hands, I think you have a chance to win it. They're running back. They're really talented running back. That's one of the best running backs in the country. Definitely top 3 or 4 running back in the country, along with the Aston Genty kid and a couple other guys that people think about. But I also think we got to match up well when you really look at this game, because I think Maryland's strength of their defense is the linebackers and the defensive line. Even though it's not a star-studded group. When you look at the strength of our defense, I think that's what you would say it is. I think it's some of the guys up front in the middle of our defense. I think some of our linebackers have not been bad this so far this year. And so I think I look at our strength and I say that's the strength of the team for Maryland basketball, or Maryland football, excuse me. I've been talking a lot of basketball. And so make sure you take advantage of that against Iowa. And I think it matches up well, because it's like they want to run the ball, and hopefully the strength of our team, the linebacker room and the defense line, can stop it. And I'm not worried about the receivers at all. I went through it yesterday. The receivers don't have much in that room. They don't like to throw the ball. And now they have to play Cade McNamara again. They don't want to do that. He can't really make a lot of explosive plays with his arm. So that tells me instantly that Maryland secondary doesn't have to try and match up with three really good receivers, and it's going to be a really hard game for those guys. It really shouldn't be. Like, if they're going to look good at any week, which they haven't looked great. I think they've had like 1 or 2 weeks they've looked good so far this season. The rest have been pretty bad, if that. But I think if you look at this game, your corners should look good. And if you force Iowa into passing downs, if you can stop them early on first and second down running the football, you can be golden. I also think it's important when you play a team like Iowa, who likes to run the ball. They're not going to be chucking the ball over the place, so they're probably not going to turn over the ball as much, because I just think that when you look at their game plan, they're not going to have the ball in the air as much. And so I think you're more likely to throw interceptions than that talented runners to get penalty, or to get a fumble. So I think when you look at it, Edwards has to be so much better with the football. He's gotten to a point where he just hasn't been that great with the football over the last couple of games. And I think he's got to get back to how it was early on in the season, where his touchdown interception ratio was actually really good. But now I've looked at it and I've been like, it just hasn't been great for Maryland football. So I think he's got to get back to that overall. And if he does that, I think we're going to be in a good spot, maybe not to win the game, but I think we're going to be definitely in it. I think if we make it a muddier, uglier type of game like UCLA did, force them to throw the ball. And to me, a lot of people think when they hear ugly, they think, oh, a lot of running game. But to me, Iowa, when they're playing ugly ball, it's when they're throwing the ball. So when I say ugly ball, I mean when they're not allowed to just run it and their pass game doesn't look great and we're able to shut that down. While Maryland might look not great either, but they still are able to stay in the game that way overall. That's kind of how I see this game and how I see if we want to be successful. But if our defense line gets pushed back and they're able to run it, we can say goodbye. We're going to lose the game overall. Let's talk about why the Villanova game is crucial for later on in terms of March Madness. I'll talk about that right now. ZBiotics Pre Alcohol Prohibitic drink is the world's first genetically engineered prohibitic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink alcohol, it gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Every time I have a pre-alcohol before drinks, I notice a difference the next day. Even after a night out, I can confidently plan without a worry. Look, I was a bit on fence about the pre-alcohol initially, but then while hanging out with some of my friends, I gave it a shot. And believe me, it's the real deal. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol for the best results. Make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly. Step 3, enjoy it tomorrow, and you'll wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. So go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more and get 50% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with your 100% money guarantee, so that if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sports apps give to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get the hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. There's so many different things you can bet on FanDuel, whether it's college basketball, the NFL, anything right now really on FanDuel. This is the best time to get FanDuel with the NFL, college football, college basketball, the NBA, all intact. So never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let me tell you right now, this game against Villanova on Sunday is so crucial for Maryland basketball. The tournament, March Madness. This is why college basketball is interesting. You can lose a game and be okay, and you can win a game and it can also not mean a ton, but you eventually have to start putting wins on your resume, and you don't want to have to wait for the last minute to be able to do that. I think Kevin Willard absolutely has a tournament team. This team is more than good enough to make not only make the tournament, but make a run. I think we have all the different pieces. But you got to start winning games, and you got to win games against opponents that are actually going to matter. And I think when you look at this Villanova win, it might not mean a ton later on the season. Right now, it might not mean a ton, but you definitely, in terms of Maryland's out-of-conference schedule, this is definitely one that you want. You dropped the Marquette one, which is okay. It's not the end of the world. That's a good thing about college basketball. You suffer a loss in college football. Sometimes your season's over. College basketball, you're not. You can suffer a loss or two, and it doesn't matter. But let me tell you, this game is still crucial. There's not a billion opportunities out there, especially in Maryland's non-conference, the way they do it. I think we have Cuse. Is there other big, meaningful non-conference game before we get into the Big Ten? And I think beating Villanova, a team that right now doesn't look that great, but later on that season, this win can mean more than a lot of people think. If they figure it out, if they start winning games, especially when they get into Big East play, that win against Villanova that's coming up on Sunday, if we got that win, it could mean a lot for Maryland's March Madness hopes, depending on how we do in Big Ten play. Now, you could lose this game and kill Big Ten play and play really well in Big Ten play, and you could still be in a fine spot to make the tournament. But if you go into Big Ten play and you win games, but you're kind of on the cusp, Villanova win is a game that could make a difference. And so I want to start building this resume for Maryland basketball. I don't want it to be last year where it feels like we're already pretty much out of it. It kind of felt like that. Like going into last year, I didn't say it. I thought if we somehow went on or something like that, that was never going to happen. We could maybe find out a way to get in there. But this year, it feels like we have to be able to it feels like we have a really good shot, but we have to be able to win some of these out-of-conference games. And let me tell you, Syracuse isn't that great this year either. So that's not like a huge win either out of conference. I just think it's important to win out of conference. And then as well as, I forgot the point, the Big Ten is not as strong as we maybe thought going into the season, or it's not as strong as it was last year, or it's been in the past. It's still a good conference. It's still one of the better conferences in the country, but it's not as good as we originally thought it was going to be. So I think a Villanova win, a Big East win against Villanova is really important. I do think the Terps get it done. I do think we're the better team, but I also think there is definitely a world where Villanova comes in and their home arena and beats us. And it just hurts our March Madness hopes. It hurts where we are as a program. And if we want to start building a resume, because we can be a team that not only makes the tournament, but we can be like a top 5 seed. I don't see why we can't be. And so if you want to be able to do some things like that, you got to start winning these types of games on the road against Villanova. You got to be able to win games like this. And I think the Terps have a really good shot at winning this game. I think arguably they're the better team, but I think you got to show it, and I think it's extremely crucial later on the season. You don't want to be saying, we really missed one there against Villanova, against a team that we were better than, because you might already be saying that against Marquette later on. And so don't let it be Villanova as well. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.